The first sign that something was wrong came on a Tuesday morning in late October, when Luna refused her breakfast for the first time in her 5 years of life. The German Shepherd had always been the picture of health and vitality, bounding into the kitchen each morning with her tail wagging and eager anticipation in her intelligent brown eyes. But that Tuesday, she simply stared at her food bowl with a distant, almost vacant expression that sent a chill down Sarah Mitchell's spine. Sarah, a 34-year-old graphic designer who worked from home, had adopted Luna as a puppy after her divorce 3 years earlier. The dog had become her closest companion, faithful guardian, and source of comfort through the lonely transition to single life. Luna's routine was as predictable as clockwork: morning walks, breakfast, afternoon naps in the sunny spot by the living room window, evening runs and bedtime cuddles on the couch while Sarah watched Netflix. "Come on, girl," Sarah coaxed, kneeling beside the untouched bowl of premium kibble. "You love your breakfast. What's wrong?" But Luna didn't respond to her voice or gentle touch. Instead, the dog's head slowly turned toward the front door. Her ears pricked forward in an alert position, as if she were listening to something only she could hear. The strange behavior continued throughout the day. Luna positioned herself directly in front of the front door, sitting rigid and motionless for hours at a time. When Sarah tried to call her away for their usual afternoon walk, Luna would turn her head briefly, but immediately return her gaze to the door. The dog's entire body remained tense, as if coiled for action. But she made no move to actually approach the door or investigate whatever had captured her attention. By evening, Sarah's concern had escalated to genuine worry. Luna hadn't eaten, drunk water, or even moved from her post by the door except for brief moments when Sarah physically guided her outside for bathroom breaks. Even then, the dog would rush through her business and immediately return to her vigil. That night, instead of joining Sarah on the couch for their usual evening routine, Luna remained stationed by the front door, her eyes wide open and unblinking. Sarah tried everything she could think of to break Luna's strange trance. She offered her favorite treats, usually irresistible bacon strips that would send the dog into excited circles. Luna didn't even glance at them. She tried squeaking Luna's beloved rope toy, the sound that had always triggered instant playfulness. Nothing. She even opened a can of wet food, filling the house with the aroma that typically brought Luna running from any room. The German Shepherd remained motionless, as if carved from stone. Sleep was nearly impossible that first night. Sarah lay in bed listening to the sound of Luna's claws, clicking against the hardwood floor as the dog paced in small circles by the front door. Around 3 a.m., the clicking stopped, and Sarah crept out to check on her pet. Luna was sitting in the exact same position as before, staring at the door with those unsettling, wide-open eyes. The sight was so eerie that Sarah felt goosebumps rise on her arms. Wednesday morning brought no improvement. If anything, Luna's condition seemed to be deteriorating. The dog's eyes appeared more glassy and distant, and her breathing had become shallow and rapid. She continued to refuse all food and water, and Sarah noticed that Luna's usually glossy coat was beginning to look dull and unkempt. Most alarming of all, Luna had begun to emit a low, almost inaudible whimpering sound, not the normal whine of a dog seeking attention, but something more plaintive and urgent. Sarah immediately called her veterinarian, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, and managed to get an emergency appointment for that afternoon. Getting Luna to the car proved to be a challenge. The dog resisted leaving her post by the door, and Sarah had to physically carry the 70-pound German Shepherd to her vehicle. Even during the 10-minute drive to the vet's office, Luna remained tense and alert, constantly looking back toward the direction of their house. Dr. Walsh had been Luna's veterinarian since puppyhood and knew the dog's normally energetic and friendly personality well. Her concern was evident as she observed Luna's strange, zombie-like state. The dog submitted to the examination passively, showing none of her usual curiosity about the clinic's smells and sounds. "I've never seen behavior quite like this," Dr. Walsh admitted after completing a thorough physical examination. "Physically, she appears to be in good health. Her heart rate is slightly elevated, consistent with stress or anxiety, but I can't find any obvious medical cause for her behavior. Blood tests were ordered to rule out poisoning, infections, or other internal conditions. That might explain Luna's sudden personality change. The blood work came back normal." Dr. Walsh prescribed a mild sedative to help Luna relax and suggested that the behavior might be psychological, perhaps a reaction to some traumatic event or environmental change that Sarah hadn't noticed. But Sarah couldn't think of anything that had changed in their routine or environment. Nothing unusual had happened in their quiet neighborhood. No strangers had visited. No construction or loud noises that might have startled Luna. The drive home was as difficult as the trip to the clinic. Luna became increasingly agitated as they approached their street, whimpering more loudly and trying to climb over the seat to get closer to the front of the car. The moment Sarah opened the front door of their house, Luna bolted past her and resumed her position facing the entrance, as if she had been desperately needed to return to her post. Thursday arrived with Luna's condition unchanged, except that she now appeared visibly weaker from her refusal to eat or drink. Her ribs were becoming more prominent, and she had developed a slight tremor in her legs from standing for such extended periods. Sarah tried forcing small amounts of water into Luna's mouth with a syringe, but the dog would immediately spit it out and return her attention to the door. The neighbors began to notice that something was amiss. Mrs. Chun from across the street stopped by to check on Sarah, having observed that Luna hadn't been seen on their usual morning walks for several days. Sarah explained the situation, and Mrs. Chan shared her own concern about the unusual quietness from Mrs. Johnson's house next door. "I haven't seen Eleanor in a few days," Mrs. Chen mentioned. "Usually she's out watering her garden every morning, but her flowers are starting to wilt. And her newspaper has been piling up on the front porch since Tuesday." Sarah realized with a start that she hadn't thought about her elderly neighbor during Luna's health crisis. Eleanor Johnson was an 82-year-old widow who lived alone in the small ranch house immediately next to Sarah's property. The two women had a friendly relationship, often chatting over the fence that separated their backyards. Eleanor was an independent woman who prided herself on maintaining her home and garden despite her age. "Maybe I should go check on her," Sarah said. But Mrs. Chen shook her head. "I knocked yesterday and again this morning. No answer. I was thinking of calling the police for a wellness check, but I wasn't sure if I was overreacting." That evening, as Sarah sat beside Luna trying once again to coax the dog to eat, she found herself studying her pet's behavior more carefully. Luna's intense focus on the front door was unwavering, but Sarah noticed that the dog's head was tilted slightly toward the left side of the house, the side that faced Mrs. Johnson's property. A terrible suspicion began to form in Sarah's mind. German Shepherds were known for their extraordinary sense of smell, capable of detecting scents that humans couldn't perceive. Could Luna be responding to something coming from Mrs. Johnson's house? The thought sent a chill through Sarah as she considered the implications. If Mrs. Johnson had been inside her house since Tuesday, unable to call for help, Sarah tried to dismiss the idea as paranoid thinking, but Luna's behavior suddenly made horrifying sense. The dog wasn't acting like a zombie, she was acting like a search and rescue animal who had detected something that required immediate attention. But why hadn't Luna tried to alert Sarah more clearly? Why this strange, almost catatonic vigil? Friday morning arrived with Luna in an even more deteriorated state. The dog was now visibly dehydrated, her gums pale and her eyes sunken. She had lost significant weight, and her legs shook with exhaustion, yet she refused to leave her post. Sarah realized that if Luna's condition didn't improve soon, the dog might die from her self-imposed starvation. The decision to call the police for a wellness check on Mrs. Johnson wasn't difficult after Sarah connected Luna's behavior with her neighbor's absence. Officer Michael Torres arrived within 30 minutes, and Sarah explained her concerns while Luna remained motionless by the front door. "It might sound crazy," Sarah said, "but I think my dog has been trying to tell me that something's wrong next door. She's never behaved like this before, and the timing matches up with when Mrs. Johnson stopped being seen around her house." Officer Torres was initially skeptical, but agreed to check on the elderly woman. They walked to Mrs. Johnson's front porch, where 3 newspapers lay scattered near the door. The officer knocked loudly and called out, but received no response. He peered through the front window, but the curtains were drawn and little could be seen inside. "I'm going to check around back," Officer Torres said. "Sometimes elderly residents fall in their backyards and can't get help." Sarah returned to her house to wait, but found Luna in an even more agitated state. The dog was now pacing back and forth in front of the door, whimpering continuously and occasionally scratching at the wood. It was as if she knew that help was finally on its way and was desperately trying to communicate the urgency of the situation. 15 minutes later, Officer Torres's radio crackled to life. Sarah couldn't make out the words, but the urgent tone was unmistakable. Within moments, she heard the sound of sirens approaching, and emergency vehicles began arriving on their quiet street. The truth was as heartbreaking as Sarah had feared. Officer Torres had found Mrs. Johnson collapsed in her kitchen, conscious but severely dehydrated and weak. She had suffered a diabetic emergency on Tuesday morning and had fallen, injuring her hip and rendering her unable to reach the phone or call for help. For 3 days, she had been lying on her kitchen floor, growing weaker and more dehydrated with each passing hour. She kept saying something about hearing a dog whimpering. Officer Torres told Sarah as paramedics loaded Mrs. Johnson into an ambulance. She said it was the only thing that kept her hope alive, knowing that someone nearby might realize she needed help. The moment the ambulance doors closed and the vehicle pulled away from Mrs. Johnson's house, Luna's demeanor changed completely. The dog turned away from the front door for the first time in 3 days, walked slowly to her water bowl, and began drinking deeply. She then moved to her food bowl and ate with the enthusiasm of an animal that hadn't consumed anything in days. Sarah knelt beside Luna, tears streaming down her face as she stroked her pet's fur. The dog's tail wagged weakly, and she leaned against Sarah's legs as if finally allowing herself to relax. The ordeal was over, and Luna had succeeded in her self-appointed mission to ensure that help reached their neighbor. Dr. Walsh was amazed by Luna's recovery when Sarah brought her in for a follow-up examination the next day. The dog had regained her normal energy and appetite, and all signs of the strange trance-like behavior had disappeared. "It's remarkable," the veterinarian said. "I've heard of dogs detecting medical emergencies, but I've never seen such sustained, focused behavior in response to a neighbor's crisis." Mrs. Johnson spent a week in the hospital receiving treatment for severe dehydration and stabilization of her diabetes. When she was released, Sarah visited her every day, and Luna always accompanied her on these visits. The elderly woman was deeply moved to learn that Luna's behavior had been the key to her rescue. "I knew there was an angel looking out for me," Mrs. Johnson said, gently petting Luna's head. "I just didn't expect her to have 4 legs and a tail." The experience created a lasting bond between the two neighbors. Sarah arranged for Mrs. Johnson to have a medical alert system installed in her home, and they established a daily check-in routine. Luna seemed to understand her role as an unofficial neighborhood watchdog, and she would often pause during their walks to look toward Mrs. Johnson's house. As if confirming that all was well, the story of Luna's vigil spread throughout their community and eventually caught the attention of local news media. The German Shepherd was featured in newspaper articles about the remarkable intuition of dogs and their ability to sense human distress. Sarah declined most interview requests, preferring to keep their story simple. A loyal dog who refused to give up when someone needed help. As Sarah reflected on those 3 terrifying days, she realized how close they had all come to tragedy. If Luna hadn't possessed such extraordinary sensitivity, Mrs. Johnson might not have survived. The dog's seemingly strange behavior had actually been an act of heroism that saved a life. Luna never again exhibited the zombie-like behavior that had so frightened Sarah during those October days. The German Shepherd returned to her normal routine of walks, meals, and evening cuddles, but Sarah noticed that her pet had developed an even stronger protective instinct. Luna would patrol their backyard more frequently. The bond between Sarah and Luna deepened as a result of their shared experience. Sarah had learned to trust her dog's instincts completely, understanding that Luna's behavior always had meaning, even when it seemed inexplicable. The German Shepherd had proven that the connection between humans and their canine companions could transcend normal communication. Reaching into life-saving intuition. Today, Luna continues to be a beloved member of her community. No, not just as Sarah's faithful companion, but as the dog who refused to give up when someone needed help. Her story serves as a remarkable reminder of the incredible bond between humans and animals, and the extraordinary ways that our 4-legged friends can serve as protectors, guardians, and lifesavers in their most mysterious ways.